Welcome to the Mama Needs a Moment podcast with your hosts, Chrissy and Cindy, co-founders of Her Plus Health Collective, and moms who understand the chaos of juggling it all. But here's the thing, your well-being matters. That's why we're on a mission to change the way moms take care of themselves. This season, every episode features a roundtable conversation, bringing together trusted experts from different backgrounds to talk about the topics that matter most to moms, creating space for more collaborative, whole person care. These episodes are short, meaningful, and easy to fit into real life. You'll hear from our Her Plus expert providers sharing expert insight and real-life tips you can use right away. Learn more about them in our free provider directory linked in the show notes. So take a deep breath, grab your coffee, and let's make these moments count. Welcome to Mama Needs a Moment. We are here with just a few of our Her Plus expert providers. They have come to join us for this important roundtable conversation on maternal grief and loss, supporting moms through difficult and hard seasons. In the next several episodes, we're opening up space for the many forms of loss mothers experience, including but not limited to miscarriage, infertility, identity shifts, or the loss of relationships, health, or loved ones, the loss of loved ones. These are conversations that don't always get the space or acknowledgement that they deserve, often because they're uncomfortable, misunderstood, or don't fit into the more traditional or visible definitions of grief. And because of that, many mothers find themselves carrying these experiences quietly without the validation or support they truly need. Our goal is to bring these experiences into the open and to create a space where grief in all of its forms can be named, explored, and met with compassion. So before we begin, each of our experts will briefly introduce themselves and share their area of focus. And as a reminder, you can watch in video format over on our YouTube channel. You can access that link in our show notes. You can go to YouTube and search in the search bar for Her Health Collective. And you can also go to our website to get to YouTube. Kelly, would you pop on and say hi and give a little background?
Sure. Thank you for having me. My name is Kelly Smedley. I am a board certified psychiatric clinical nurse specialist, and I'm also a certified perinatal mental health professional. I am the founder and CEO of Waypoint Counseling and Maternal Wellness. We are a practice that focuses on pregnant, postpartum, and beyond. We serve women's and moms across North Carolina. And I am also a loss mom myself. I have experienced the loss of my son when he was 3 months old to SIDS, and that was almost 13 years ago. So I not only have professional experience, I have a personal story as well, and I'm excited to talk about this topic today.
Thank you so much, Kelly. We're so sorry for your loss. And thank you for using your experience as a way to help others.
I'm Catherine Rose. I am an integrative health practitioner. I work a lot with women and moms that are struggling with chronic or autoimmune conditions. And I'm also a single mom of two kids, 9 and 11. I'm just excited to be here. I too think this topic is not talked about enough. I'm glad that space is being created to talk about it and to make it more almost more common to talk about and to make it okay. Make it okay for us to feel and just let other moms out there know that they're not alone.
I'm Sarah Shimanovsky, and I'm the owner of Fermata Counseling, which is a practice where I focus on moms and perinatal mental health, but I have a soft spot in my heart for grief work as well. And like Catherine was saying, like, let's talk about it, because a lot of times in our grief, we are isolated, and the less isolation that there is, and the more these uncomfortable conversations are brought forward, the more we find our community and the more we find our safe spaces to talk about grief and realize that, oh, actually, we all walk our own grief journeys. And, you know, there's a lot that I can get from having these conversations with others.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited to get started in this wonderful conversation.
Grief does not always have a name. That's something I've realized over the years with all the moms that we work with. When we hear the word grief, for most of us, we think of the loss of a person. But for many moms, grief shows up in ways that don't always have a clear name or a space to be acknowledged. It can be the loss of who you were before motherhood, that identity shift that we go through as we enter mom life. It can be changes in your body, postpartum, perimenopause, menopause. It can be moving away from community that you knew prior to having a child. It can even be watching your child grow and need you differently. I experience that grief almost daily as I watch my child grow up. These experiences are real, but they're often minimized by others, by society, and sometimes even by ourselves. And when grief goes unrecognized, it can leave moms feeling isolated, unsure if what they're experiencing is even valid. So today, we're going to widen the lens on what grief actually is and give language to the experience that so many mothers are carrying quietly. So I would love to know, how do you define and recognize the many forms of maternal grief, especially the ones that often go unseen or unacknowledged?
I think grief in general comes in many ways and many forms. Like you said, it could be just seeing your child grow up, meeting their milestones. You're excited. You have all these bittersweet moments as a mother where you're excited for your child to progress and learn and grow and develop, but you're also longing and missing those moments when they were smaller or when they couldn't speak or they were learning to walk and talk. So that is one aspect of it. I think in terms of, miscarriage or stillbirth or infant loss in particular, that is often a grief that goes unrecognized, and it's what we call disenfranchised grief. Often with miscarriage, many people don't even know the mom was pregnant because she hadn't shared the news yet. And so when you lose a pregnancy, there's often a lot of blame on yourself unnecessarily, but moms do this. And along with that, there's like a sense of shame or guilt, and then this isolation that you're carrying this secret alone, this grief alone. And so that can be really challenging and isolating. It's part of why I do the work I do, is to name our losses. And I've even seen women who've had several miscarriages, the grief is different with each one. And there's guilt about that, okay, if I had an early loss, maybe that hit me a different way than a later loss did. Does that mean I didn't love that potential baby like I did the other loss? And the right answer is there's no right or wrong way to feel when you've had a loss of a pregnancy or an infant or any child. And there's no right or way to grieve with the milestones that your children obtain here on Earth. So it's very nuanced and very layered.
Kelly, the no right or wrong way is so huge, and I think in all aspects of grief. And just like motherhood too, though, we come in with all these preconceived notions of what is right and what is wrong, but we haven't experienced what we're about to experience yet. So, in terms of motherhood, we come in with like, and I'm going to be this kind of mom, and I'm going to breastfeed, and it's going to be and no one's going to watch TV. And like, that's our preconceived notion that we come in. But we also come in with like, I know someone who had a miscarriage and they were fine. And that should be me. Then we start with the I shoulds and the expectations that we carry in that we may not even know that we're carrying, but with those expectations comes the judgment on ourselves, which, we can definitely have a conversation about society's judgment and society's expectations on us, but it starts internally, I think, with those expectations that turn into judgments about our grief and our processes.
Right. And a lot of moms will get comments sometimes by well-meaning people, but oh, you'll go on to have another pregnancy, or you already have a few kids, you're still blessed. And I think that takes away from those experiences and the feeling of like, but you want that baby, you want that pregnancy, and you can be both at the same time. You can be grateful for what you have and still be grieving. And when people make these comments, sometimes thinking they're being supportive, they can actually really contribute to that isolation and that aloneness that no one else understands.
To add to that, in clients that I see, I feel like grief and trauma with them shows up oftentimes physically a lot of the time, especially in women who are dealing with chronic and autoimmune conditions. Many of them have like experienced layers of loss and stress and trauma, but have never fully processed it because life has required them to keep going and keep pushing, especially in motherhood and society. So instead of having those emotions, allowing those emotions to be felt and expressed, the emotions are just pushed down. And over time, in my experience, what the mind, y'all can probably speak more to this, but what the mind suppresses, the body eventually expresses. So it's very important to feel, which is not always easy.
And that brings up a good point that I stress with folks, that often grief is associated with trauma, right? Especially for women that have had miscarriage or stillbirth or infant loss. That's a traumatic event, right? Even early miscarriage, that's a trauma. Someone you cared about died. And so people don't associate the two. And when we experience a traumatic event, that lives in our body. And so when we get these reminders, if we don't deal with it, it brings back those same feelings. And that's, what you're saying, Catherine, is you see it show up in the body. And we also in mental health see it show up in many ways, like anger, irritability, substance use. So if the grief is not dealt with both physically and emotionally, it can have negative effects down the road.
I'm so glad you said that, Kelly, because in our next episode, we will be talking about when loss is both grief and trauma. So I appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Her Circle, the ultimate community for moms looking for real connections, meaningful experiences, and expert support.
From mom's night out and family adventures to book club, volunteer opportunities, and expert workshops, Her Circle is where moms come together to learn, laugh, and lift each other up.
Spots are limited, so join the waitlist at herhealthcollective.com/membership.
I just wanted to elaborate a little bit with what Kelly shared, by sharing something personal about my first miscarriage. I was working in mental health at the time. I had been a music therapist for many years, including inpatient work and, seeing people and work through their traumas and bring their traumas to the forefront. And when I had that 10-week miscarriage and went through that process and then tried to compartmentalize it and kind of again work with that expectation of like, well, but I'm going to be, it's fine. I'm going to be fine, and not allow myself. It was in my body that I started to recognize like, I'm having a trauma response, which I could name because I've seen it and I've worked with it. But there was such a disconnect between like the miscarriage being categorized as a miscarriage and trauma, when really we do need to see for what it is. And of course, everybody has their own experience. Not every miscarriage must be traumatic. Not, but in this certain case, the way that it happened, very public, very me pushing through something that I shouldn't have pushed through in retrospect. I did bring that in. And Catherine, it was my body that I was just like, oh, I am shaking. What is going on? I am curling into a ball. Oh, this is a trauma response. So it was that made me then seek specialized mental health care. This was the point in my career that I discovered, oh, there are perinatal mental health therapists who specialize in this stuff. So it started a whole trajectory for me. So I appreciate what both Catherine and Kelly shared there and hope that that story brought maybe an illustration to it.
You're illustrating kind of what a lot of people do. They push through, right? And most often it's a disservice to our own grief and but also our loved ones and our jobs and you know when you were speaking I was remembering my experience which was awful and I was back to work a week and a half later as a mental health therapist. And I'm like, I look back and I'm like, what? Who let me do that? You know? And at the time, I was like, well, what else am I going to do? I don't want to sit at home all day, but I was not ready. But, you know, I just think back like, I should have allowed myself and given myself permission to not be okay and not care for other people, not care. You know, I had guilt that I had just been through maternity leave. I was only back to work for a week and then we lost my son. And so I felt this urgency, well, you know, I have to go back to work. And it's like, no, I need to take care of myself. And so, you know, whether any type of grief, even if it's about your kid graduating high school, like it's okay to take some time to reflect and be sad and let yourself feel the feelings because you're better off for it.
I think we have to pull in the society's expectations too in that conversation where, such a brief period that you gave yourself for something so horrible and tragic that would take a lifetime to process, but you couldn't even give yourself like a full 2 weeks off of work. Right. Yeah. And it just gets, I was in a similar, not for that loss that I described, but for the loss of my mother, my bereavement leave in a mental health facility was 2 or 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And my supervisor, who couldn't do anything about it, was trying to reframe it for me. Like, won't it be great to be able to focus on something else? And like that is the push for us to quote, quote, return to normal as fast as possible when we experience grief, which is unrealistic and will shake us up and push us back rather than move us forward.
I think speaking of expectations, no one, grief makes people extremely uncomfortable. I was talking to someone the other day and he has a friend that's going through stage 4 cancer treatments, and he shared that his friend is feeling extremely isolated because, death and impending death makes people really uncomfortable. And people need to realize that it's not about you, it's about what the other person needs. And you're not going to make someone cry if you bring up the name of their child or, they're crying already. So by naming the grief and showing support, you're acknowledging the heaviness and you're actually helping the person.
I just wanted to touch quickly back to society and how it doesn't feel like it's slowing down at all. I feel like it's just speeding up. And to let grieving mothers out there know that even though society is out there going a million miles a minute, our phones are dinging, technology is everywhere, it is still okay to listen to your body and to pause and to give yourself that space and that time that you need. I have not experienced loss in these same ways, but through a divorce, that was some grief. And then after my first child, I didn't know what postpartum depression was. I'd never heard of it. And I just thought, okay, is this what life's going to be like? I was crying like all day, every day, and didn't want to leave the house. I was so isolated, but I didn't want to see anybody. It was a strange, terrible feeling. But then you have this little baby that you love so much, but you're also crying every day. It's just bizarre. But all that to say, grief washes over you. I feel like sometimes it comes like a tsunami wave and like knocks you down out of nowhere when you're in the grocery store or standing in the kitchen. And some days you think, maybe I'm over this. And then another day will remind you that you're not. And it's just a constant thing. And to accept it and to feel it, to allow yourself to feel it is one of the biggest gifts you can give yourself.
Which is hard to do when it's extremely when it's
It
a
is.
painful thing, right? We're
Yes.
accustomed to minimizing pain, right?
Mhm.
That you have to walk through the pain to get out the other side. Because if you don't, the pain just accumulates and accumulates, and then you explode.
Thank you all so much for talking about such a vulnerable topic, as well as adding your own personal experiences into that. I think that that is very important for our listeners to hear, and that many of them will relate to what you've stated. In our next episode, we're going to dig in deeper to when loss is both grief and trauma. So I'd like to encourage people to come back and listen to our episode next week.
That's a wrap. You carved out a few moments just for yourself, and that's a big deal.
We understand that time is limited, but we've got your back, which is why we keep these episodes short, sweet, and packed with goodness.
Don't miss a thing. Hit the follow button so you're always the first to know when a new episode drops. If you had as much fun as we did, let us know by leaving a review.
And remember to let other moms know that we're here doing motherhood alongside you, grateful to share a few moments taking care of you.